Without further ado, I'm going to bring our Dalton Glasscock up. He's our moderator today. Dalton's with the Congressman Ron Estes' office. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and again, welcome this weekend to Pachyderm, and especially for the GOP convention down at the Hyatt as well. Hopefully we'll see a lot of your faces over there. So when John approached me a couple months about having this forum, there was no hesitation between his question and me saying yes. Something I've always been passionate about is getting young people involved in the political process and also just having the youth perspective part of the dialogue. And so today we have a great group of panelists, and I'll introduce them here in a second. But I do want to say that when I first got started in politics, it was May 2010, and I was just 15, and my first event I went to was a Pachyderm lunch. And so this kind of kicked it off, and so I love the opportunity to come back here and also have this presentation. And I know a lot of these panelists have worked alongside you, fought alongside you, and have built relationships among a lot of you as well. So these should be some familiar names and also maybe some new names. Before we start, I wanted to give some sombering numbers about why we need to figure out how to appeal to young people in today's world. So in 2012, Barack Obama won 5 million more votes than Mitt Romney among voters under the age of 30. Romney held a 2 million vote advantage among people over 30, and that difference was enough to ensure Obama's reelection. In 2012, Donald Trump received just 37% of the youth vote for those under the age of 30. However, it wasn't always this way. Back in 2004, President Bush only lost the youth vote by 2%. And back in 1984, if we go back a little bit further, President Reagan won the youth vote with 59%. And so we believe that we can win the youth vote, and we believe that we can win it again. And so today we just want to talk about our ideas moving forward for the party and how we can implement those. So I'll have each panelist introduce themselves, but I'll give a quick introduction of each one. Down at that far end, we have Zach Haney. Zach is owner of Carnival Guys out of Topeka. He's a public speaker, and he was a former state Senate candidate out of Topeka, challenging Hensley, correct? Chase Blasi, I'm going out of order now, is here in the middle. He's the legislative director for the Senate President, Susan Wagle, and he's a former Colwich City councilman, and I believe he was the youngest elected official in the state. Is that also correct? Okay. Scott Bishop is a veteran, and he was the former district director for Congressman, now CIA Director Pompeo. Morgan Anderson is the digital director for Senator Pat Roberts. And Jennifer Szambecki is a marketing brand specialist, and her interest is in rebranding the Republican Party. And so we'll start with a quick introduction. If you just want to say a word about yourself and why you are a Republican, we'll give each person about 2 minutes, and then we'll kick off with some specific questions for each of the panelists. So we'll start with Zach.
Zach Haney. I own Carnival Guy Party Rentals in Topeka. Started my business at 16 years old, and we officially celebrated 5 years in business last year, continuing to grow in the capital city. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship, but also serving my community, so that's why in 2016 I decided to run for office against Senate Minority Leader Anthony Hensley. Ran a strong campaign, came up short, a little over 3,500 votes. He spent $100,000, we spent $6,000 on the campaign, and I plan to take that seat in 2020. I'm starting early, gonna knock on more doors. Why I'm Republican, I realize that government can't fix all of our problems, and I believe in a limited federal government. I believe in smaller control, just issues that I align with, ideas that I've had that just align with the Republican Party.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Morgan Anderson, and like Dalton said, I am the digital media director for Senator Pat Roberts. I just moved to DC about a month ago, but I'm a Wichita native, so been to many a Pachyderm in my day, so it's great to be back here. So with my job, I'm essentially a huge marketing, graphic design, and political nerd all day. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about social media. That's just really what I'm passionate about, connecting millennials online. So I'm a Republican. Why I got involved in the Republican Party really traces back to my little brother. He is 17 and has Down syndrome, and doctors wanted him to be aborted, and so really the heart of why I'm pro-life is why I'm a Republican, and that issue is very important and near and dear to my heart. He's getting ready to turn 18 in a few months, and he's the biggest light in my life, and so really the foundation of why I'm a Republican goes back to my pro-life roots, my faith, and really and truly protecting the sanctity of life. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
First, I want to thank Zach for running against the minority leader in the Kansas Senate. I mean, we've got a group there because Anthony's quite a delight to work with. But it's always coming back home in Central County. I'm in Topeka right now for the 2018 session, as I'm sure you are all following. It's getting more eventful by the day. But the big elephant in the room, school finance, is yet to be addressed. But as stated by Dalton, I am the legislative policy director for the Kansas Senate President, Susan Wagle, who paid you all a visit back in December, I believe. And got involved in politics when I was really young. 2010 was the first time I was a junior in high school. I was born and raised in West Central County in Colwich, Andale area. Went to Andale High School, and my junior year I worked for Mike Pompeo's first congressional run, and was successful. And kind of throughout my young youth, I got more involved, and now I'm in Topeka with the Senate President. So it's always, you never know where it'll go. Just kind of follow God's lead. But like Dalton said, when I was a senior in high school, I decided to run for office, and I ran for the city council in my hometown and defeated the incumbent. And let me tell you, God bless anybody who's in local politics, because it's the worst. I mean, everything is personal, from the pothole in my road to the dog's neighbor barking next door. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they want you to solve. But I'm a Republican because when I was in 8th grade, my teacher really kind of outlined fairly the differences between the two parties. And growing up, we're a very Catholic family, and we have ag roots. And traditionally, those were Democrats. And so all the Blasis, we were traditionally Democrats. And by 2012, thank God, all the Blasis are now registered Republicans, because we realized the Democratic Party has shifted so far to the left. So that's why I'm involved, and look forward to do great things.
Scott Bishop. Unlike these three previous people, I'm an engineer, so I'm not nearly as eloquent as they are, so you have to forgive me for that. But grew up in Wichita, Kansas, went to Goddard, then went to the Naval Academy for school, did 8 years in the Navy, and then April of 2016 was looking at moving back home, so went to the Kansas Republican Convention and met Mike, talked to Mike Pompeo for a few minutes, and then came back and served as his district director and campaign manager for the 2016 campaign. And then now I'm at Spirit, Research and Development. So why I'm a Republican, I guess it's mainly kind of like what these three previous people said, but generally I believe in the power of the individual with limited government. I feel like individuals have a much better capacity to solve the problems that our country faces, not the government. Individuals give the government the power, not the other way around. So that's why I'm a Republican.
I'm Jennifer Szambecki, and I'm a senior brand manager at Sullivan Higdon & Sink advertising agency here in town, and my career has been in marketing. And I was telling somebody earlier that my role in the party is most random volunteer. Wherever I'm needed, that's where you'll find me at Sedgwick County and state party events and throughout the year. I'm also my precinct committee woman, but that's as elected as I've ever gotten, so way to go, guys. I was raised here in Wichita by very liberal parents who are still very liberal. And so I started working outside after I graduated college, and I was doing nonprofit marketing for many years before going into the agency business. And I just saw firsthand how destructive government intervention was in the lives of children and families in our community. And I started rethinking everything I'd been raised with. And so I very organically became a Republican. Right about the same time, I was getting to know Mike and Susan Pompeo, and it was Susan who nominated me to the Eisenhower Excellence in Public Service Series for Women. And so in 2013, that whole world opened up to me in such a wonderful way, and I'm really grateful for all the opportunities I've had to volunteer for various campaigns since then. That's it.
I think you go hold it real fast. Okay, and then now we have a couple specific questions that all of you guys approached me about. And so each person has like their own specialty, as you saw today. So there's one question, and then we're going to open it up, questions among all of you guys as well. And feel free to toss us some hard ones. So we will start with Morgan. We're just going to go in a random order as well. Try and keep them on their feet. So how can the GOP use social media and new forms of media to appeal to young people?
Thank you, Dalton, for letting me go first. Like I said in my introduction, I'm a huge social media, graphic design nerd. I eat, sleep, and breathe advertising and how we can really connect with millennials. My phone is currently 10 feet away from me, and I feel like I'm missing a part of me. Most millennials are glued to their phones in some way, shape, or form, and so we've grown up in this fast-paced world where we're interconnected in ways that we've never been before. People say we're now 3.57 degrees from people, like 7 degrees in Kevin Bacon, I guess, but we're changing things now, and we're more interconnected than we've ever been. And so the Republican Party and politics in general, we have a unique way to reach millennials and reach my generation because that's where we're at already. We are able to form organic and unique relationships with people online in ways that we haven't really been able to before. Just like radio in the 1920s and television in the 1950s transformed how we're able to communicate, social media has done that as well. Websites like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube used to be far-fetched in these very kind of foreign platforms for people to use, and now they're just the norms. And so when I served as the state chair of the Kansas Federation of College Republicans, we had a really unique opportunity. We were millennials who were able to talk to other millennials about things that we cared about where millennials were already at. And so the younger versions of the party, all of us, organizations like the Young Republicans, College Republicans, are able to do that in a special way, but it doesn't mean that the Republican Party in general shouldn't be targeting those individuals. On all of the platforms, you're really able to micro-target those sections, so you can find out what people are passionate about. People share things about, maybe overshare their opinions online, so you're able to really find out people's opinions because people are willingly broadcasting them. So not only is it a resource for the Republican Party to tap in and find out things, you're able to really find the pulse of America. If you look at Twitter, you get opinions. There's millions of tweets every single day, and there's thousands of users that are on there at all times. And so if we're not using social media to reach everyone, but especially millennials, then we're missing out because the Democrats are not slowing down. Donald Trump was able to really bypass traditional forms of media in 2016, as many of you saw, and still continues to do that. He doesn't have to go the traditional route, and in fact is able to talk to people directly. So social media provides us a really unique opportunity, and I'm excited to see that the Republican Party is finally open to all of that.
Okay. Zach, with your experience in business, how do you feel, or what principles of business do you feel that government can adopt to better enhance performances and better serve constituents?
As a business owner, there's just a variety of things that kind of come to my mind. Most businesses don't survive the first 3 years, and so now that I'm in my 5th year, I think some of the things that have helped, number one is communication, just having great communication with employees, with vendors, with customers, great customer service. And it's weird to think, our politicians are really in this customer service Republican Party. It's like, we have members. Yesterday, I tried to set up a meeting with our mayor in town, wanted to meet with her next week. Couldn't get in touch with her or the receptionist, so I left. Margot was her name, a message, and kind of expected a call maybe today. But surprisingly, 5 minutes later, I get a call from the mayor's office, and she goes, "Zach, I'm so sorry. I wasn't available when you called. We want to provide the best customer service." And I was sitting there thinking, it's interesting to me that the mayor's office has adopted that philosophy of business. We want to provide great customer care. Another part for me is finances. I think that too many people live without a budget, and as a business owner, you have to have a budget. And I think sometimes we have these spending problems that the government can afford to look at, okay, what's a successful business doing? I took a tour of a prison kind of in this general area. I won't say the name of it to get anyone in trouble, but I was taking a tour and met with the warden, and it was interesting to me that he made a comment that at the end of the year, they spend their entire budget. They are usually left over with $100,000 or more, and they upgrade the security system, even though they don't need an upgraded security system, but they just don't want to lose that funding. And so for me, I was sitting there going, so we're spending $100,000 on a security system that doesn't need upgraded. And he says, yes, but we don't want to lose that funding. And so I sit there and think, well, okay, so we're lacking the communication. If they really need this funding for something, couldn't they just give it back? Could we sit down at a table and try to work this out rather than here's the money, just spend it? So things like that, I think it really just comes down to having really good communication and looking at the budget.
Awesome. Scott, you've had the unique opportunity to serve in the private, public sector, as well as the military. Could you tell us differences that you've seen between all three of those works, and your experience in all three of those sectors?
Yeah, kind of jumping on what Zach was just talking about, that the focus on cost reductions and savings is definitely the big one. I have the exact same experience, seeing firsthand how September is coming around, they pass around the catalog saying, all right, pick out what you want because we got to spend the budget. Whereas at Spirit, you can better believe it that we are tracking every dollar, and it's a complete opposite effect of end of the quarters rolling around. We got to meet and beat the numbers that we reported to the street that we're going to save this year. It's a complete opposite effect. But I guess kind of it's not lost hope. The market forces work both in and outside of government. So one example that I got to see when I was in the Navy was when I first got to my ship, fuel prices were going through the roof. Somebody had the great idea of giving a very small incentive to commanding officers of ships to work on saving money on the fuel burn. So the destroyer that I was on, for example, has 4 25,000 horsepower engines that normally we would just leave them on because we wanted to be able to go fast whenever we wanted to. But it turns out in the middle of the night, you don't really do that. So my ship, for example, we reverted to just having one of those 4 engines on and a single generator on instead of 2. Just that simple change that didn't really affect the operation of the ship, saved several $100,000 per year for one ship. And all that it took to get that was leadership coming up with a performance tracking system for a metric that actually mattered. So in the government, you can't always give incentives, but there's definitely metrics that you can come up with to help track performance that actually matters. Another example that I think rings true both inside and outside of government that I got to see is more of a truism than a difference is that organizational structure matters to running an effective organization. So if there's somebody in the food business or the ag business in general, you can think about all of the different parts of the federal government you have to go say mother may I before you want to do something. An example that I had was when I was in Afghanistan. One of my responsibilities was for moving equipment in and out of bases for the National Reconnaissance Office, and the bases in Afghanistan are run by the Army, who, in my view, being in the Navy, doesn't have a very organized command structure sometimes. Mike and I would argue about that. So if we wanted to take a piece of equipment out, I had to go get permission from 6 different commanding officers, and that was a nightmare. And the same can happen in business where if an organization left to its own devices, if it's not actively managed well, they can kind of let things slide and responsibilities maybe get muddied and you have to go get different directors' approval for the same thing. But I think probably an advantage that business has over government is that they can be a little bit quicker in that regard to fix things. But it doesn't have to be that way. So I guess that's my lessons learned is there are truisms both in and out of business and in government, and you can apply those lessons that the market has learned back to government. So.
Awesome. So Jennifer, we're going to give the first hard question of the day to. How do you think the 2016 election changed the face of politics in this country? And what do you think it did to help our system? And what do you think it did to damage the system?
Well, one thing that I think that we struggle with as a party that I've seen as a relative newcomer and as someone who has a marketing branding kind of mind is that we seem to be going in a lot of different directions. And one thing that is true about a brand is that when you are successful as a business or as an organization at attracting a loyal following, whether that's a loyal consumer or a loyal participant in your organization, it's typically because you have a really strong, well-defined, consistent brand. That you have something that is true about you, that separates you from other groups or businesses, and that is both how you talk about yourself and how you are perceived by the outside. And so I think of an example like a franchise, like a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A. We have a certain level of expectation when we go to those places, whether we go in Sacramento, California, or Montreal to a McDonald's. We have some expectations about what we're going to experience there, from service to food and everything kind of around that, how it's going to look, all of that. And so I think something that the 2016 election did, for some places, it solidified that kind of brand promise that the Republican Party should have, or that we may want to strengthen. But I think to another extent, it's like it's bifurcated us or divided us even more. And so what I'd like to see moving forward, and when I think about the brand of the party, is are there ways that we can position ourselves, and I'm totally just using business marketing branding language here, not party language and not politics language. Can we position ourselves as a party in a way that if you asked a 24-year-old in one part of the country and a 74-year-old in another part of the country, what does it mean to be a Republican in the United States, that you would get a fairly similar answer? And I think that is something that we need to really try to work toward in the coming election cycle here in the state and throughout the United States. And I think it's a big thing to think about, and we're a party of volunteers, and so that makes it even harder. But I think it's a worthwhile endeavor if we want to keep attracting people, especially in our generation, are very tribal and very loyal. And we want to feel an identity with something. And if the party isn't giving us a clear identity to adopt, then we're going to have a really hard time keeping and growing our party.
Yeah, the next question's for Chase, and it kind of goes with the same idea of how are people attracted to join an organization? So the question I have for you, based on your experience in the state, is what policies do you feel to help attract millennials to the state of Kansas and the Republican Party both?
Well, there's no question the millennial generation is obviously far different than any other generation that's come before us, but I want to clarify, we're not the generation eating Tide Pods right now. That's the generation behind us. Actually, what is a millennial? I Googled that. A millennial is, by most studies account, someone who's currently below 40, all the way down to about 21. So those who more or less graduated college and are the young people in the workforce, getting married, starting families. So just to clarify that, the generation behind us is the ones eating Tide Pods, and I think they're the iGen is what they're calling them, for like the iPhone, and those are the generation that have the phones in their hand when they're toddlers. So in my experience, young people are attracted to just the basic rights in our Constitution. I mean, we grew up in the war of terrorism. We grew up when the economy crashed 10 years ago. We saw our families struggle, people getting laid off here in Wichita, getting furloughed. We grew up with those struggles, and the fear. Osama bin Laden was the boogeyman to our generation. So when he was gone, it was great for us. We celebrated. But so out of the result of terrorism came obviously the Patriot Act. I see a lot of young people are very concerned about the collection of data with technology. They're concerned about the warrantless searches. They're tracking our phones, emails, all of our data and like that. So I think a lot of people would like to see, young people would like to see a lot of that reversed. And I think through time, as we see millennials take over and take public office, I think we'll see some reverse in that in Congress. Another issue, just yesterday, and Dylan, college Republican at KU, a lot of his college Republicans were they're fighting with the liberals on the college campuses in the State House yesterday. In the Senate Fed and State Committee, we had a hearing on the Campus Free Expression Act, which protects freedom of speech. Imagine that. It's unfortunate that we have to pass laws to protect speech in today's day and age, but unfortunately many colleges across America, including KU, who's rated red by some studies, are limiting speech to certain zones where they're denying groups or speakers that can speak because they're considered hateful or just, I guess, right out evil in some people's minds. And so yesterday the students were starting to debate each other. One student, the liberals, were saying that we can't have anybody speak unless it's fact. Well, what's fact? We can't have anybody express their opinion unless it's fact. And they want to limit folks, and they were wanting to ban all these groups, and groups would think like, what, But it was amazing to see that some people strongly believe that if I don't agree, just because we don't agree with them, they should be censored. And so many college Republicans yesterday were in Topeka fighting the good fight, saying that we're being censored here in Kansas, on college campuses. We have to fight the administration and our peers. So we're trying to push this bill, and we're hoping it goes through. But and there's just no question that our generation is very pro-life. I don't think there's a single issue you see young people get around more than the pro-life movement. And so that issue, I think, unquestionably, is the one issue this generation will make gains on. And right now, obviously, with the tragedy in Florida, gun rights is a big discussion. And all I have to look to is my Facebook to see all the young people completely defend the right to bear arms. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're not talking about mental illness. Mental illness is skyrocketing among young people in America, and yet that's the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to address that. Our government doesn't want to address that. So I think moving forward, I think we have a lot of hope in our young people. I think, unfortunately, the media and folks and the really loud ones give the millennial generation a bad name, but have hope. All of us aren't like that. So
Awesome. I have one softball question, and then I'll open it up to see if you guys have questions, and then we'll just go back and forth. If you guys don't have any questions, I'll throw some more out there. So first softball, you can answer this in like 30 seconds. Who's your favorite Republican leader and why?
Oh man, you didn't tell us you were. I'm gonna go rogue and follow up on one thing I wanted to say about branding and not answer that question. One thing about branding that I think we have to remember is that we're gonna lose people. If we have a strong identity and we have a strong brand position, we're gonna lose people. And I think there's a lot of, I think it's great to have a big table and want everybody at it, and I'm for that. But some of us just aren't American Express customers, and some of us would much rather be American Express customers and wouldn't be caught up with a Visa in our wallet. I mean, we just have to own our identity and our brand and be okay with the idea that that means not everybody is going to be a Republican. Obviously, not everybody is going to be a Republican, but I think there's kind of this fear that if we own a certain identity and a certain platform and a certain set of values, and we get real loud about it and we get real serious about it, that that's going to hurt us. And I'm here to say that the opposite will happen, and that we will attract a stronger, younger, more loyal tribe of Republicans. Yes.
Feel free to go rogue if you don't want to answer that question too, because that was a much better response. So
I think I'll go with my expected response, which would be Mike Pompeo would be mine because I work for him. But mostly because he will always do the right thing no matter what. So anybody who's followed his time while he was in Congress might remember back to 2013 when ISIS was really getting started in Syria. There were two people that really bucked the trend. I think that the Republicans made a mistake actually back in 2013, but Mike and Senator Cotton stood up and said that we need to do something about this now. The Republican Party in general didn't really have the stomach for it at the time, and it came back to bite us. The very first thing that he did when he was CIA director, if you followed that at all, was he got on a plane, went over and talked to the leaders in the region there. And if you look at the progress that's been made since the Trump administration came in to date, ISIS is drastically less capable today. They're definitely still a problem. So yeah, and anybody who knows Mike also will know that he will work his tail off to the point of running me to never sleep. But he will always try his hardest and do the right thing no matter what. So that's what I like about Mike.
Me too.
are we supposed to say our boss is our hero? Or I personally, in my opinion, differs than my parents' generation. My parents, my personal hero right now in politics is Paul Ryan. I think he's young. If you see his social media, it is phenomenal. It's like we've never seen before. I think what you have to look to is Nancy Pelosi to realize how lucky we are. But I think Paul Ryan inspires me, and the House has passed many great legislation. Unfortunately, all to die in Kansas, the U.S. Senate right now. But I guess that's how it works. But But anyways, that's who I admire at this moment.
Kind of piggybacking off of Chase, a millennial-ish Republican that I really admire is Congresswoman Blasi from New York's 21st Congressional District. She actually served as Speaker Ryan's speechwriter in the 2012 election when he was running with Mitt Romney. But she is a young woman who's involved in politics. She is the youngest elected woman who serves in Congress, and she as well does a phenomenal job of being able to take a stand and show that you can be a conservative woman without having to be crazy liberal, and you can be very successful as a woman involved in politics, and she's just amazing. She also married a Kansan and is a KU fan, so rough shot.
I'll skip over that. One thing I was thinking about as we were sitting here was when I ran my campaign for state senate. You know, I'm a young person. I thought this is going to be so easy to get the young people out to vote for me. All my high school friends. I mean, we're going to take Senator Hensley down. And it was the opposite. It was tough to get these young people to vote for a Republican. And what I started to realize was when I was asking questions like, what do you not understand about the Republican Party? Why do you feel like what's Senator Hensley going to do for you? He's been in there for half a century, and it seems like they don't feel that the Republican Party has optimism for the future, that we're not very optimistic. So when you look at the kind of the branding for Mitt Romney in that last campaign and Obama's slogan, I believe, was forward, and then Mitt Romney was restore America. And so for these young people, they're sitting here thinking, we don't care about the good old days because we didn't grow up in the good old days. We want to see America push forward. And so I think that the way, again, that we're branding ourselves, we're talking about ourselves. I mean, I'm a young person. Why do I not want awesome economic opportunities for fellow young people? Why do I not? I want those things. So I need to get better as a candidate when I'm out there too, being more optimistic with other young voters.
Awesome. So Jennifer's coming around for some questions from the crowd.
Yeah, are any of you familiar with Prager University? I think especially for educating young people, 5-minute videos on Facebook.
Yeah, it's another great use of social media. They're able to reach millennials and people of all ages and educating people with really short videos. Especially people are very visual learners, so and able to express things through. They do a lot of like animated videos, and so they're very easy to watch. They use very like not technical jargon with a lot of stuff, so it's very easy to understand. And so you're able to educate people through visuals, which is really important, especially on social media.
My question has to do a lot with the millennials. Recently at my house, I had a young lady over, and she said, I'm not going to pay anything but the minimum on my student loan because after 10 years, it's all wiped clean. It seems in the media, no one talks about who's paying this bill and how much these expenses are costing the state. The state of Kansas, the CanCare budget has increased tremendously in the last 4 years. Yet, every time in the paper you hear us espousing how wonderful it is that more people have health insurance, but nothing about the cost that people will pay. So as a millennial, how will you change this?
Well, I hope the student at your house is doing some form of works for a nonprofit or a teacher or something. Otherwise, it's just not someone who's been out of school for 10 years not going to have it wiped away. I hope she is educated on that matter. But not to mention, I don't know if I'll even stay in. I mean, that was recently added by the Obama administration. But the truth of the matter is, the millennials is unbelievably in debt. Most students are graduating college, 50, 75,000 to 100,000 plus in student loan debt. And also they're going to be handed pretty soon in the next 10 years a bankrupted entitlement system. So our generation is seeing catastrophe down the road if we're looking far enough down the road. So how do we fix it? Well, the issue is now. We must begin addressing entitlement reform. Hopefully Congress addresses that, I think maybe next year. But in Kansas, you're right, CanCare is growing at out of proportion. And student loans, student tuition is just, money's always there, so the government's giving it out, and students are maxing out, and they don't realize the consequences. So when they leave college, how are they going to get a mortgage? They're not going to get out of their parents' basement. How are they going to buy a new car? I mean, it's unbelievable what we're doing to young people in America today. And so I hope leaders wake up and realize things got to change, and it's got to change now.
I think the business community can help with that a lot too. You know, I think a huge problem is kids don't figure out what they want to do with their lives until they've already graduated from college with a huge amount of debt. So one of the things that Spirit's doing, I'm not speaking for Spirit, I'm not allowed to do that today, but one of the things that we're doing is we're bringing high schoolers out, taking them around the factory, kind of setting them up with an engineer for a day, and that way they can know, do I want to invest $80,000 or whatever it costs now to become an engineer, or do I want to go to the Wichita Area Technical College and get a real hard technical skill? There's lots of different avenues out there, and that's just talking from the engineering standpoint. I think the business community in general can kind of help with that.
Great. Another question.
I think Ed's hand was up first. I did not get back here.
Okay, I have a problem with the Republican big tent. For example, we have a senator in Congress named Susan Collins that votes 90% of the time with the Democrats. She doesn't even support the Republican platform. Now, I feel that if somebody is totally against our platform and votes 90% of the time with the Democrats, I think it's time we call this person a rhino and excommunicate them from the party.
Oh, James.
Are you talking about Topeka? I mean, there's a lot of them there too, but that's all I gotta say.
Social media, one of you mentioned your goal is to cut back on monitoring. The NSA, I'm just setting the table here, now monitors worldwide communications, probably every cell phone, home phone, any text, whatever. I think it's going to get worse. These homegrown terrorists, these school shootings now, that artificial intelligence is used obviously on the phone. If I texted yesterday to a friend just to make an example, a nuclear weapon bomb, those 3 words, I said more than likely that NSA computer tapped that right there, identified my telephone number, and analysis person would match me and take a look at my background and make sure that I wasn't a threat. I don't think the monitoring is going to go down. I think it's going to go up on all platforms. Who would like to address that?
I don't know if I have a really response to that. That's a very interesting perspective. I mean, I guess the one who said it, I guess I'll be the one to have to respond. But I don't know. I think every year you see Congress, or every 2 years, however often it is, they renew the Patriot Act. The margin's getting smaller. And I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe the younger generation didn't be convinced, but obviously the intelligence community and the military is very respected. But I think there's maybe some safeguards on to be put in place still, regardless on the collection of data. But you're right.
It's good to see the fresh faces up here. I'm so excited and hopeful for the Republican Party. How important is the Kansas Republican Party platform to the younger generation? Is there anything that you would change in it, and why?
That's a great question. I think our platform as a state party, and certainly as a national party, is really part and parcel to what I'm speaking about. I think one thing that we would be wise to do would be, and I don't claim to know how these things work operationally, but I think we would be wise to shorten it, to focus on some key issues and to learn how to better communicate, how to better utilize the channels that have been delivered on a platter to us at this point in human history, and to really just basically tighten up our message around those, let's say 5 to 10 even key issues. I think the more that we kind of get into all of these issues that are important to a very small though vocal segment of our party. While those are important, and it's not like those have to go away, they can be part of the fodder. I think when we focus on our platform, our platform needs to be focused, and that we need to learn to communicate about it in a focused way that helps communicate to outsiders. If this is you, come on in. If this is not you, don't come on in. And just be real focused about it.
I want to hit on that real fast as well. I agree almost 100% with Jennifer. Right now it seems that we decide to try and add something new to our platform every year, and they're just random pieces of things. There's no way that every single person in this room is going to agree on every single issue. But I guarantee you that we can agree about the cornerstones of a smaller government, protecting life, less regulations. Like, those are things all Republicans universally agree on. And like Jennifer said, when you talk to a millennial or you talk to a young person, they're going to pick these issues that maybe we don't even agree with the platform on. They're going to nitpick all these random issues, but they're not going to get to the core. If you ask a millennial, do you believe in smaller government? Yes, they do. If you ask most of them, are you pro-life? Yes, they are. If you think that government should get out of the way, they believe government should get out of the way. But it's a lot of these other issues that we begin to lose people, and I think we should just focus more, and I think that's how we win the youth vote.
I'm going to hit that a third time, just in case you guys aren't tired of hearing it yet. But exactly like Jennifer said, so much of our platform gets lost in the mud, especially when the half-life of a tweet is, 4 minutes or something. We have to find a way to really boil it down to what's important to us as a party. If you probably ask, a young college Democrat, ask them why they're a Democrat, they're going to be able to sum it up in a few key points: healthcare, abortion, jobs, or something like that, or free tuition. They're gonna, free everything. It's gonna be their keyword there. But we have an identity problem within the Republican Party, and by simplifying, streamlining our platform, using some of those business terms, we're gonna be able to cut through it and hopefully help bring more people in.
Good. Go ahead, Zach.
Is anyone familiar with Simon Sinek, the author there? So he has that book, Live With Why. If anyone has read that, it's the circle model, and so he talks a lot about just successful companies, successful people, and so as a fellow business owner, like, I get excited about that. I want to know why Walt Disney was so successful, or even someone like Mother Teresa. How did she have all of this success as far as, people supporting her cause and who she was? But it's because these organizations, these people, they live with why. And so many of us can tell people what we do, how we do it, but it's very few that people can actually give that message. This is why. This is the reason that I wake up, I get out of bed. This is the reason I drove 2 hours to come to Wichita from Topeka. This is why I'm here, because I'm passionate. I want to see the next generation of Republicans get involved. And so I think that, at the core, if we can figure out why are we Republicans, and what does that mean to us? How can we share that other than just telling people, this is how we do it, this is what we are?
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you all for being here. It's been great listening to you. One of the questions I get from young people, especially one of my family, very liberal, is Republicans don't seem to care about people. They don't have any. What happens to the people who can't pull themselves up by their bootstraps? I believe, and I grew up believing, that you make it possible for people to be the best they can be, to do what they want to do. And sure, some people are going to have some struggles, but they're really concerned about, what about the people that drop out? What about the Down syndrome children? What about the people who can't make it? What about the single moms that are struggling? So I think somewhere in our platform we have to have a message about that. I wonder how you would approach that.
Well, I'd argue, when I get the same response in Topeka, I often argue the opposite. I said, 3 years ago we passed welfare reform here in Kansas, requiring people who are able-bodied to work. Obviously if you're blind or disabled, we're not going to throw you off the can care system, and food stamps and all that. But if you're able-bodied, you're 25, living in your parents' basement, if you want the government assistance, you got to work. If you're working even 10 hours, minimum that wage job somewhere, $10 an hour, I think the requirement's 18 hours, 20 hours to get the requirements, but that, I would say, is helping build people up, getting some skills. We have tons of programs to get training skills at these technical colleges and stuff like that. There's tons of programs and resources out there, and I think the party just fails to share that. And unfortunately, we can't get past emotion often. People just say, well, you hate poor people, and it's like, well, no, I don't. So it's just messaging.
That's always kind of a funny question to me because it's because of my work with the lower income communities when I was out of college and working in my first nonprofit that I became a Republican. I experienced firsthand, and in my own family and just looking back on things growing up that I was dealing with people who were in their third generation of poverty, third, fourth generation of poverty, who didn't even know that they could work, who didn't even know that they could finish school and go to anything after high school. They just were going to have babies and not work and get the paycheck from the government. And it was like, what, we did this to them. Why did we do this to them? What a horrible, how awful to put these people in a position of being needy instead of needed. And I'm still really passionate about, I believe that the core principles of the Republican Party are the answer to that, not the problem.
Thank you. My question is primarily from Oregon. How do you teach those of us that are way past being millennials how to use Facebook, and particularly precinct committee people? And I'm going to leave it to Facebook because I think I tweeted once or twice and they didn't really much care for it.
Someone in your office.
Well, very interesting question. I'm actually leading a panel in about 2 hours at the Kansas Republican Party convention about social media, kind of the nuts and bolts. But as far as that's concerned, just that in itself, the Republican Party having a training during the convention weekend means that we're taking strides to get there. And so as far as like learning how to, really optimize Facebook and use it to its full like potential, I guess, there are lots of resources online that are either put out like natively by the organizations like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all have like tutorials on how to maximize those things. I just spent a lot of time with Google trying to make sure that everything is how I want it to be. And then obviously all of us are lucky enough to have like grown up using a lot of this technology. And so it's very firsthand for all of us. It's not new or different for us, but I recommend Google, and there's lots of just like facebook.politics.com gives you lots of great insights.
What room and what time?
Did you pay for the convention?
Okay, yeah. I'll let you know.
Let you know if our
Just want to make sure you're registered. Just want to make sure you paid.
Over here.
It's refreshing to hear you guys talk. I wasn't aware we had enough people thinking like this with the experience that I personally have associated with as a former military officer and been involved in business for 40-some years, including education. Having said that, we know that the cost of education has drastically increased, government, etc. The return efficiency has declined, and we have all the problems with student debt and so forth. What do each of you have any specific ideas how to reduce the cost of education, get better results, reduce the size and cost of government, get better results at the same time? We have a president, as you know, that's very effectively, in my opinion, doing these things. Do you have ideas that you would like to see implemented and supported?
And this will be the last question, so.
I think that is a very tough question to answer on a global level, but kind of bringing it back to what I talked about at the beginning in the power of the individual, it's the consumer. Students are consumers. No one's forcing someone to pay $100,000 to go to college. I think that it's a market just like any other. There's lots of private schools out there and state schools, so I think it'll take the consumers stopping using these massive debts to pay for their college.
Well, if you guys want to give 30-second closing remark, and we'll wrap it up here. If if you guys have any last comments. If you've said everything you want to say, that's cool too.
Looking forward to the debate tomorrow night.
Awesome. Well,
This has nothing really to do with me personally, but a follow-up to what we were talking about with Jim's question earlier. I think one thing that's important to remember and to model for your kids and your grandkids and everyone around you is, if you, like me, agree that the government should not be in the business of doing things like funding lots of nonprofits, and nonprofits shouldn't be in the business of taking lots of unstable red tape government funding, please be sure that you're being very generous with nonprofits in your giving. Please be sure that you're supporting organizations like the Salvation Army, where they're trying to get off the government payroll with their programs and not have to worry about HUD funding, for example. I think it's such a small thing. It seems like such a small thing, but I think that's the kind of thing that we should really be instilling in our younger generations, that there's a big systemic cycle happening here that has to do with government funding and dependence on government funding, and there are more things we can just be doing in our families and our homes to have an impact.
I'll just say in closing, I supported the president, I voted for the president, but unfortunately I think many of my friends and peers who are in politics who are young did not vote for the president. They didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. They hated her more, but they threw away their vote as something that was whatever. But I think, unfortunately, immigration is a big issue that still hangs on a lot of young people's minds. It's an issue that young people look at differently than our parents' generation, especially my parents might have a different view on it. I think Congress must address immigration in the near future. I think when you put all over the news, social media, I see all the time, social media, people sharing, all these young families these young kids get ripped apart from their parents get deported, they're staying here because they were born here or they've been here their whole lives. I think that just the young people in this country immediately just revolt against the party. I think that's sometimes the perception that Republicans just hate people, and I think in some way Congress needs to address that in a fair and approachable way.
Well, kind of touching on what Chase had said earlier about our generation, I know we get a lot of hate sometimes for being millennials or being on our phones all the time, but just know that there are plenty of us that are out there working and trying to make sure that we do have a Republican Party that is branded well and that we can believe it and bring more of our peers into. And so just know that there are people out there working, and there's plenty of us out here to do it. So we're excited, and thank you guys for welcoming us with open arms, and wouldn't have gotten to the job that I have now or any of my friends getting to our jobs that we have now without the support from you guys just throughout the years. So thank you.
I just want to thank Dalton for inviting all of us to be a part of this and getting that organized. I think for me, just continuing to support other young Republicans, for all of you in this room. Just when I ran my campaign, it was awesome to have some of the governor's staff that he directed and said, "You help Zach Haney with this campaign," or Eric in the back when he was with one of the senators there. And Morgan designing posts. It was awesome to see the support from the party, and I think that if we want to continue seeing young people and young politicians get involved, we need to support one another.
Yeah. Again, I just wanted to thank John Todd, John Stevens, and the rest of Pachyderm for giving us this opportunity. Hopefully today we gave you hope for the future of the party. And if not, come over and talk to us. Let us know your opinions. We like an open line of communication. Hopefully we'll see you at the convention. And again, I know every single one of us is willing to talk to you after. Every single one of us wants to help get more young people involved. And so if you think there's anything we can be doing, feel free to reach out to us too. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
There you have it. Special thanks, Dalton, and thanks to Million. I believe our party is in good hands.